Good evening. Not legal advice. Like, subscribe, share, comment, show, whoever. Even though I find this a very distressing topic and discussion tonight, and I really do, I have to stay in the same format and consistent with kind of how I see things before we get into the 10K. And we're going to discuss the 10K and a bunch of stuff that really troubled me about the 10K. But before we get into that, because I do it every time, I got to keep on doing it, notwithstanding the fact I literally have a pit in my stomach after reading the 10K. Did you hear about the thief that preferred robbing criminals and babysitters? He cleaned out every crook and nanny. What is the difference between a politician and a crook? No, seriously, I cannot tell. And last but not least, a politician, a lawyer, and a crook enter a bar, and he drinks a cup of coffee. All right, moving on. So if you recall, I've been engaged with management counsel for GTII since early February, out of concerns I had for various things related to how they were conducting the business and if in fact they were trying to consummate a transaction. Now, of course, I had followed and do follow Alpine, and I'm going to touch on that in a second, and understood that conceptually people were waiting for Alpine to get shut down because they thought it would squeeze. And, perhaps that will be the case. And I've been following Alpine and its various legal proceedings, and I think I have a fairly good grasp of what's going on. And it may very well may be the case when Alpine gets knocked out of the box that will stimulate a squeeze or some other positive benefit for GTII. But I don't know. I don't know that for sure, and I can't rely upon that. Alpine currently is waiting for a decision in the appellate court in D.C. with regard to FINRA's attempt to expel them. That will be decided probably within the next 30 days. And then after that, depending on the outcome, there may be an appeal or two appeals. So there may be some time before Alpine gets knocked out of the box in that direction. At the same time, there's a proceeding that arose out of Utah against involving GTII, involving Alpine directly, in which the NSCC and the DTCC are trying to also get rid of Alpine because of problems with their capital structure. And apparently, but it's confidential, we don't know yet, disciplinary hearings were heard on that in or about March, middle of March. I don't think a decision has been rendered, but if in fact Alpine is kicked out of that structure, they would still have an appeal and probably two appeals. And again, same time frame, 6 months, 12 months, we don't know. It's obviously gone on longer than people had expected when I first got involved and started following Alpine. So Alpine are scumbags, whatever. They don't deserve to be in business. And eventually they'll be shut down. And perhaps that will cause a squeeze. But I don't have any control over that. And what I did have control over, or at least what I was concerned about, was about the activities undertaken by GTII and its management. So I'd heard stories from people coming to me and telling me their attempts to get a deal or transaction done. I'd heard responses that were very, not very nice, discussing the attributes of management or their attempts to consummate transactions. And so I lost faith in management. Again, as I said, I contacted management in February, had a series of discussions, including with counsel, and in writing, they promised that on or about March 31st, that a 10K would be filed, actually on or before March 31st, that a 10K would be filed, and it would set forth kind of what's going on in terms of their attempts to consummate a transaction. And I was asked to wait from pursuing any type of legal remedies until that 10K was provided on or before the 31st. Confirmed that, was in writing, spoke about it on multiple occasions, along with other things with the attorney. So time goes on, March 31st comes, no 10K. Pissed me off, to be honest. But they do an extension. So the extension, technically, because it was April 1st, was Easter, arguably the 16th, although that's kind of waiting to the last day, would be the last day for them to file the extended 10K, even though they had represented something differently to me publicly, and I had represented to everybody else publicly. So they knew that was going to be disclosed to the public and that public might rely upon it. And it turned out that information about filing the 10K on or before March 31st turned out to be false or not true, or they didn't comply. So today is the 10K. It was filed, or at least I saw it Pacific time this morning. I took a look at it, probably about 8 minutes, and then later in the day, I spent a little more time going through it. And it's just a first run through, and I haven't really taken a deep dive. But just in going through it, I was really concerned about a lot of the information, and I'm going to touch on that as orderly and quickly as I can. Now, before I go into that, just so it's clear, I've literally been contacted by others, and I mentioned that this morning, after the 10K came out, notwithstanding whatever the 10K says, these were parties that had attempted to do transactions with the management of GTII, and for whatever reason had not been successful or had not been properly treated by GTII. So it's interesting to me that even notwithstanding whatever occurred in the 10K, as of today, there's still people interested in doing the deal. And part of the reason they're interested in doing the deal relates to the Alpine situation and the concentrated short position, whether it be counterfeit or otherwise. There appears to be a concentrated short position, and there's multiple suitors of GTII that apparently like that fact and would like to be involved in the GTII sphere because they want to take advantage of that, amongst other things. So with that put out there, I'm still optimistic as long as management is excised from the equation. And I really think they should be excised, and you'll see in more clarity in a second. Now, yesterday or the day before, I became aware of some time ago that they had an ongoing stock purchase plan. So in other words, notwithstanding they're getting shares, it's actually a stock sale plan. The directors of GTI each month sell a certain amount of shares without them acting. It's automatic. And I indicate, and it's based on the idea that if it's set up beforehand, it protects somebody selling shares from claims of insider trading, as long as it's set up in good faith. So that's kind of the prerequisite. And a day or 2 days ago, probably over the weekend, I contacted counsel, the directors, everybody who was involved, and I let them know that they should stop exercising the sales of shares of stock of GTII. It wasn't established in good faith. Under the circumstances, it would be a breach of their fiduciary duty, since they know, or they claim and agree, there's a short position, and they're basically selling to the shorts. So whatever they sell is probably bought up by the shorts at a discounted price. It certainly is, let's say, it suppresses the price of long shareholders. It's dilutive, whatever. So I said, stop. And I did that 2 days ago. And today I noticed the same time I saw the 10K, there was a Form 144 that was filed by 4 directors indicating a continuation of that stock sale program. And today, just adding up the numbers, as of the 16th, those 4 directors sold approximately 300,000 shares of GTII. And what's interesting is the CEO, CFO, David Reichman, who's basically the person in charge, in the past 3 months, he had sold shares per the plan at a rate of 64,000 and some change per month shares. And today I saw that the amount he sold were 194,000, which appeared to be triple a normal month. Now, that's what the forum said. I can't tell if it's accurate or not. Maybe there was an error made. As a matter of fact, one of the things I noted in the 10K, which kind of surprised me, because they knew, obviously, that somebody would be carefully scrutinizing whatever they wrote, where there were numerous typos in the document. And even though typos are not really substantively significant. I would think if somebody thought somebody was breathing down their neck, they would make sure that whatever they filed, especially after getting an extension, would be picture perfect. And this was not. And that suggests to me, or raises questions to, at least to me, about the competency of those drafting those documents. Now, this is a tough one for me because my goal here, and I've tried to kind of walk a fine line here, my goal is not to kill the company. So like when I'm going over this information, on one hand, I'm thinking to myself, this information really is terrible, at least in my mind. And I don't want people to run away from the company just based upon the fact that, in my opinion, management sucks and beyond sucks. So I've tried to kind of take a fine line, but I really do believe that if someone who is competent was in place, that there's enough opportunity to make something out of GTI and to salvage this situation that's been created by management. So kind of going through the 10K briefly. Here we go. Mission statement, again, reiterated multiple times: to increase share value through the acquisition of companies with significant growth opportunities. And recall also in the PR that was issued on April 9th, 2024, it announced the hiring of a new COO effective May 1. And that person was going to, I guess, review ongoing transactions or deals, whatever those are. And also it pointed out deficiencies, I think, in operational structure and other things, and was there to make sure the company was compliant. So it kind of threw out a few things about defects in structure, et cetera. Now, I hadn't reviewed the 10K, obviously, at that point in time, but I was taken aback about the admissions in this PR about the defects in the company's structure and how they handled matters. And if I recall, also there was a discussion that there would be some kind of succession plan. And part of my I don't have anything against. Listen, I'm an old guy, but I don't have anything against older people. However, if they're not doing their job, then they shouldn't be in their job. And just so you know, the directors of GTII, Mr. Reichman, I think, is approaching 80. The head of the audit committee is 87. And another director, I think, is 77 or 78. So not a lot of spring chickens, maybe not a lot of interest in doing what needs to be done to close an acquisition. Maybe they're settled enough. Maybe they think if they sell, and I'm just speculating, maybe if they sell, 200,000 shares a month, maybe you can live off that, I think. Let's see. So, but I don't know what their goal is, except that they really haven't done what needs to be. And remember, just for the sake of discussion, that PR that indicated that there were deficiencies or suggested deficiencies is April of 2024. Remember that April date, because it's going to come in again in a little bit later. I'm not going to address the entirety of the 10K because it's long, 55 pages or 58 pages. Literally, I started it, and like 20 minutes in, I had to stop because I got nauseated from reading it. I welcome, by the way, if management wants to come on the live stream and address the points I'm raising, so be it. Happy to have you. I'll give you an opportunity to address it if you want to. It's kind of a doubt that that's going to happen. So what are the key things that I discovered in the 10K? First of all, the revenue in 2022 was zero. The revenue in 2023 was zero. So consistent. And that's at the same time, I believe that the chief's executives may be living in a luxury hotel, driving a luxury vehicle, and receiving a salary. I think the CEO, Mr. Reichman, receives a salary of $600,000 per year, notwithstanding stock and stock options. $600,000 a salary. And the other only employee, now remember, 2 employees. The other only employee of the company, at least as stated in the 10K, is Kathy Griffin, and she's the president. She's a part-time president, and she gets paid $200,000 per year. Doing what? I do not know. I do not know what Reichman does. I do not know what Griffin does. Zero revenue from 2022 and 2023 doesn't suggest a lot of positive activity, but they have those salaries in addition to the stock options they get. And they do defer. I have to give them that. They do defer a portion of their salary each year. I think Reichman might have deferred $200,000 of the $600,000, and Griffin a smaller amount. So, but I don't know why they get paid anything, because I don't really think they're doing anything. At least it appears that way. So, what caught my eyes about the totals? So, in 2022, operating expenses for the company, and I'm rounding numbers, operating expenses were approximately $13 million. And in 2023, operating expenses were approximately $83 million. So, almost 7 times what they were in 22. Mostly, those relate to giveaway of shares to either directors, foundations, officers, professionals. Not really clear specifically, but it certainly references that nearly, I'm guessing, the specific number, but somewhere around, like, appears like in that period of time in 2023, perhaps 60 million shares were given away for free. And it also appears that in that same time period, from 2022 to 2023, so 60 million shares are given away. And then on top of that, it appears there's 30% dilution. So shareholders are diluted by 30%. And then on top of that, giveaway of 60 million shares, which might be another, substantial percentage at, for free or without any compensation. And I don't know on what basis, because not disclosed. Again, 2 employees, but compensation to directors and medical donations in 2023 rose by, and I'm going to read the number and let's see if you could figure out what the number is. So the number they wrote was 14,7800,877. Now, that would be, I think, 147 million. I don't really think that's probably a correct number, just one of the typos that's made in this document. But it's 14,780,000 is what I think the correct number is. And that's the increase in compensation to directors and medical donations, which I think is just giveaway of shares, in 2023, at a time that GTII is generating 0 revenue. 0. And I don't think it was disclosed or requested or anybody got notice of or asked about that. Directors' compensation, and it has some vague reference that there's a carryover, but doesn't really spell out what the carryover. Directors' compensation paid out in shares in 2023 was approximately 55 million. And expenses in 2023 rose from 2022 and these numbers are just absurd, from 12.5 million to 82 million. Again, that's a 7-fold, 6 to 7-fold increase. And last but not least, just so we get it out here, the net loss. So approximately in 2022, $13 million. And Reichman and his crew did such a fine job in 2023 that the net loss in 2023, and remember, 2022, $13 million, the net loss in 2023 approximated $100 million. 0 revenue, paying themselves a salary, giving away shares with a net loss of $100 million. Absurd, disgusting. Really. Unconscionable. Cash position. So what happened to the cash position of the company, and where did it go? Which I have a question. Where did the cash go? And this is cash used in operations. So the cash position as of, and so they reference, first of all, the end of 12/31 of 2023, they reference that there's enough cash for ongoing operations. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if they could be taken at their word, but let's just assume for the sake of discussion, it is what it is. At the end of 2022, there was approximately $3.32 million of cash. at the end of 2023, there was approximately $1.2 million of cash. And the difference in the expenditure of cash from 2022 to 2023, and I do not know where it went, was $4 million approximately. In other words, in 2023, they spent approximately $4.4 million of cash on operations. However, and in 2022, they spent approximately $400,000 cash on operations. Now they were equally as efficient in terms of generating revenue, in that they generated zero in both years, but spending the extra $4 million to generate zero revenue doesn't really seem to be a good use of money, time, and whatever other adjective you want to add on. I don't know what happens in 2024. I don't know what they've spent the cash on. I know one thing for sure. I don't really trust management. That's for certain. My personal opinion. Now on page 11 of the 10K, there's a reference that, and I'm reading from my notes. There's a reference that cash flow from continuing operations. And so again, this is the 10K reflecting the 2023 year. And again, before I go on, Fattel, the attorney who told me to wait to the 10K was filed, told me to wait because it would reflect their ongoing progress with regard to consummating a transaction. But how could it do that if it only reflected what was occurring in 2023? I found that very confusing also. So on page 11, there's a reference that cash flow from continuing operations will increase from the acquisitions made during the year. What acquisition? The revenue is zero. And here on page 11, they're saying that an acquisition apparently that occurred was going to raise revenue, but there is no such acquisition, or at least they haven't disclosed acquisition. No one has told me about acquisition. I think by now I would have heard if there was any sense or semblance of any potential acquisition. So I don't know if that's a mistake or an attempt to be deceptive. Don't know. But if it's a mistake, it's another mistake in a document that these super competent people should have been careful about because they knew it was going to be heavily scrutinized. Revenue from charitable donations between 2022, and I don't know why there would be revenue, shared distributions to charitable entities. 2022, I don't even know why they were giving away money then when you have zero revenues, but they were. But the difference between 2022 and 2023 is dramatic. Charitable donations in terms of stock donations increased by 250%. 2.5 times. Why? When the company is making zero, when the stock's being diluted, when the shareholders are hurting, when it appears management has no real intention of undertaking an acquisition, why are they giving away shareholder equity? Why? Again, appears to be treating it like their own piggy bank. Employment and professional fees in 2023, 2 employees, approximately $10 million. For what? There is a claim, if you go through it, there's a claim that in September of 2023, they set aside and issued 20 million shares for a potential AI acquisition. And as far as I can tell, when I looked at the document, there's no language anywhere in the document that suggests that any transaction is likely to close, when it was closed, who they were working with specifically, who had a right to cancel, whether the company itself has acknowledged that any deal is pending. Nothing. In fact, it's left vague, contrary to what Mr. Fattel promised in writing that would occur. There's no reference. So it does say, though, that 20 million shares were set aside and issued in case of an acquisition. So I looked at page 17. Page 17 has a category specifically involving shares set aside for acquisition. And in 2022, it shows that approximately 10 million shares were set aside for some acquisition. Obviously, some acquisition that I guess didn't occur. But in 2023, contrary to what they say, that in September of 2023, the 20 million shares were set aside, in the box for 2023, there's nothing. It doesn't say 20 million shares, it doesn't say 5 million shares. There's an empty spot. So as far as I'm concerned, there may be some inconsistency between their reference and claim that they actually had set aside shares or thought a deal was real, if in fact their own books and records don't show it. It makes me skeptical of what they claim. And again, as I sit here today, right now, April 16th, 2024, 6:26 Pacific time, I have no indication from anybody that a deal is close to closing. Nothing. Now, all that is terrible. I mean, the spending, giveaway of shares, the officer compensation, all of it, inappropriate, the huge loss, the salaries. I mean, I can go on and on. And that's just from one quick overview of this stupid 10K. But what struck me the most and what concerned me the most, even more than that, and disgusted me, was on page 19. And it's just a very small note, just a little note, like almost throwing something out so maybe people wouldn't pick it up. And what the note says is that the OTC moved GTII from the OTCQB to the pink sheets. Now, the OTCB, I guess the OTC has 3 different levels of exchanges. The OTCQB is the middle level. There's a higher level of exchange called the OTCQX of the OTC. And so companies that are more formal, that adhere to more formalities, that may want to move up and trade in other exchanges, they would trade on the OTCQX. GTI wasn't able to do that. Perhaps it couldn't meet all formalities, so it traded on the OTCQB. However, and remember I mentioned the April date, in April of 2023, and I wasn't aware of this, and probably no one else was aware of this, or was it disclosed? And if it was disclosed, it certainly wasn't disclosed in a clear and complete fashion. But in April of 2023, GTII was moved off the OTCQB to the pink sheets because of continuing concerns by the OTC of the accuracy of disclosures made by GTII as to insider transactions and beneficial ownership. Now, when I heard that, what occurred to me, or what concerned me, is that reference specifically to insider trading. And I don't know what the issue is to beneficial ownership. Does that relate to, associates of people on the board? Does it relate to gifts of shares to parties? But I don't think it was disclosed. And what's the significance of that? When, at least my understanding is, even on the OTC, when something's moved down to the pink sheets, there are certain institutions that cannot invest in pink sheets. And in fact, there may be bylaws that prevent certain institutions from investing in pink sheets. So that means that the capital that comes and buys GTII is not as broad as it should be. Now, that's probably something that should have been clearly disclosed in April of 2023, not just alluded to in April of 2024. And it likely had a significant effect on the stock price of GTII. obviously it would provide less liquidity for GTII if less institutions could invest. And why management did not disclose it when obviously it was a material event, I don't know. But I find that incredibly disconcerting. On top of that, why didn't they correct it? It's April of 2024. Apparently, things like that could be corrected. So you could perhaps go in and explain the transactions and get yourself moved back up to a higher level of exchange where you have more access to capital and where you have more liquidity. But apparently they didn't do that at all either. Don't know why. Don't know why they didn't disclose it, but it really concerned me when I saw that. And perhaps that's why they delayed things. Perhaps they were concerned themselves. Perhaps they knew they had to disclose it and they thought maybe they could bury it in there. I don't know, speculating. But the fact it's 1 year, the only reference is 1 year after the fact. Really, is that timely? Is that appropriate? Is that legitimate? Is that lawful? It's certainly disconcerting and nauseating. And that's why the title. Now, in that same page 19, where they reference what I just said, they reference that AI deal. And again, that's September of 2023. So that's 8 months ago. As far as I know, I haven't heard anything about any potential deal closing involving an AI deal, contrary to what Mr. Fitzgerald suggested publicly. 8 months have passed. The document 10K doesn't suggest anything. So where is the other transaction that's going to close? I mean, are these people so blatant and unconcerned and uninformed that they don't understand this is not just like some private company where they could deal with it as they please, but it's a public company subject to the SEC, and this is how they handle it? Really, really amazing. So the only thing I could say, I'm almost speechless. So they didn't disclose this material event. They acted completely inappropriate in 2023 in terms of how they spent and gave away shares on behalf of shareholders, the true shareholders. They don't seem to be doing anything. They didn't consummate a transaction. They didn't raise any revenue. They have not complied with any requests. They hide away. They should be gone. Bottom line. So the only thing I can say at this point in time is, and I have not wanted to get to this position. I started it because I wanted the management to leave. I was perfectly satisfied with that. I didn't want them to dig it. I keep on digging a deeper hole for themselves. I feel bad for them, honestly. I feel bad for management. It's really pathetic in my mind. So all I can tell you is get out before this hole eats you up. Because, likely I'm not the only one who is thinking about this. I know that for a fact. And this company can still be salvaged if you get out. Because someone who wouldn't operate as you did, as reflected in your 10K, could get these transactions done, in my opinion. There's enough things out there that I can see that some deal can be done. And again, suitors have interest in GTII because of the concentrated short position. They still think there's something to take advantage of. Now, this is just my opinion, just my one time through, but it really was disgusting. And again, the material non-disclosure that got them, I'm going to call it delisted on the OTC, should have been disclosed in detail. And why it wasn't, I don't know. Anyway, that's my quick summary and concern. Alpine, I'll keep you apprised. I'm again, I'm still, as amazing as it sounds, I'm still optimistic about GTII because I figure at some point in time, as thick-headed as these management members are, at some point in time, they will understand what the potential ramifications are. Even if they don't understand from me, I'm sure somebody will explain it to them. And I really don't want them, I had no interest in getting them in trouble. So I hope that they do the right thing and resign effective tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So let's see what happens. I gave you an opportunity, I'm giving you another opportunity. I really don't want to have to continue to pursue you in litigation and to open the door for others to do the same or worse. So do the right thing and get out now. Have a good night to everybody else. Be well. If you have any questions, because I'll put this up about the, feel free to put them up there and I will comment and take a look at them, try to answer questions. Obviously, I'll keep you apprised after this this particular live stream. I'm sure GTII are watching. Hi out there. Take whatever I said to heart. Really surprising. Really surprising and disturbing. Everybody out there, take care. Again, be well. See you soon.